The price of gold hit a new weekend record in London's bullion market today, setting a 3 p.m. Friday benchmark above $2,405 per troy ounce, as betting that the US Federal Reserve will soon start cutting interest rates grew again following yesterday's soft inflation data. Global stock markets also rose, shrugging off US claims of a Russian plot to assassinate the CEO of a major German weapons supplier to Ukraine, and setting a new high on the MSCI World Index as US President Joe Biden ended the NATO summit in Washington by calling Kamala Harris, his running mate for November's election, Vice President Trump, and calling Ukraine's leader, Volodymyr Zelensky, President Putin. Western government bonds held on to yesterday's price jump, keeping the annual rate of interest offered by 10-year US Treasury debt beneath 4.20%, the lowest since end March. With so-called supercore inflation running very slightly negative for the second month in a row on June's CPI data, betting in the US futures market this morning gave a consensus forecast for year-end Fed rates of 4.76%. That was down by 0.12 points from Friday last week after the odds a no-change decision at September's Fed meeting collapsed on Thursday's inflation data, falling further to drop below 1 in 50 today. According to data from the CME Derivatives Exchange, that's the lowest since early March. Back then, bullion prices were trading $200 lower than now at what were new record gold highs. Note, says precious metals strategist Nikki Shields at Swiss Bullion Refining and finance group MKS PAMP, Powell was warned during this week's Fed testimony to Congress not to cut before the election if he wants to keep Republican support for Fed independence. But for now, whether they cut in September or after the election in November or December doesn't matter. Cuts are coming in 2024, and the gold market has been pricing in rate cuts for the past year. Even though they never came so far, says Shields, the market just rolls it forward and keeps pricing in rate cuts. Thursday's dramatic price rise in bullion pricing saw the giant GLD gold-backed ETF expand 0.2% in size to its largest in over a month. World number 2 and smaller New York-listed gold ETF, the IAU also expanded, growing by 0.2% for the week so far. But demand in China, gold's number 1 consumer market, appeared to back off today as yuan prices for Shanghai settlement rose for the third session, running to 564 yuan per gram, the highest since mid-May's all-time records. That saw the Shanghai premium to London quotes halve from Thursday's level, slashing this week's average incentive for new bullion imports into China to less than $17 per troy ounce. Twice the typical level pre-COVID, this marked the smallest weekly Shanghai premium since this time last year. London silver prices had earlier traded around $30.70 per troy ounce at the city's midday benchmarking auction, adding 0.4% to last week's 4.1% rise, with the highest Friday fix since end May's 11-year high. Shares in Rheinmetall were meantime little changed by a report from CNN that US intelligence alerted their German counterparts earlier this year to foil a Russian plot to murder Armin Papperger, CEO of the 135-year-old auto and weapons manufacturer. A key supplier of artillery shells and military vehicles to Ukraine, RHM today held 70% higher year-to-date on the Frankfurt stock market, nearly 450% above the eve of Russia invading Ukraine in 2022. All this is presented in the style of fake stories, responded the Kremlin's ever-busy spokesman Dmitry Peskov, who has previously denied Moscow's involvement in arson attacks on a Ukraine-linked warehouse in London, an IKEA furniture store in Vilnius, and the Marywilska 44 shopping centre in Warsaw. One can't treat such reports seriously. While the gold price in dollars set a new Friday record today, the UK gold price in pounds per ounce lost 0.4% from last weekend at £1,853, 3.9% below mid-April's record weekend level, as the new Labour government of Keir Starmer marked its first week in power. Euro gold prices added 0.3% from last Friday to trade at €2,207 per ounce around the 3 p.m. benchmarking auction, still €50 below its record of 13 weeks ago. Tokyo's Topix index today lost 1.2% from Thursday's fresh record, high after Japan's Ministry of Finance warned overnight that it will intervene to try reversing the yen's plunge on the currency market if traders keep betting on it to fall. Please like this video and subscribe to our channel.